Well, good evening, everyone, and welcome to the first session of Krapar Kini this fall. This is a relaxed environment where we get a chance to look at an example from the 1500-year literary history and treasures that we have in this form of our language that to many of us is inaccessible, but hopefully through this group and through our own kind of efforts and interests is becoming more and more accessible to us. So let's start out just by saying a toast and a cheers. Krapari Ganatsa, to the life of Krapar, this form of the language we all love, and to the health and just enjoyment of everyone here and in this group. I look forward to this every single time, and it's always the highlight of my week / month. So cheers.
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 Let me share real quick with just with everyone that's here the schedule of events that we have at Zohrab coming up. So you can see in orange are the 3 Krapar Kini sessions. So we're here tonight with Bishop Daniel. Next on November 17th, we'll have Ashley Bozian from St. John's University looking at violent and graphic scenes in medieval Armenian histories. So if that doesn't spark your interest, I don't know what will. Usually we look at liturgical texts, theological texts, hagiographical, but here we're going to showcase some of the other things in Krapar. And then on December 13th, we'll have St. Nersa Seminary graduate and Fordham graduate Andrew Kayayan looking at some passages from Yeznik Kolbatsi, Yeznik of Kol, one of the 5th century theological and apologetic writers. And then there's a few enrichment evenings coming up. So Dr. Alexander Gavorkian is going to be giving a talk on diaspora, homeland, and economic development. This is going to be a really interesting talk, especially because he's going to draw on a comparative perspective of how other diasporas engage with their homeland and looking strategically at what are some of the most beneficial ways to promote economic development and growth in the homeland. And so coming out of the pandemic, and even more so for us, the war in Artsakh last year, we're ready for fresh ideas and looking at how we can best engage and best contribute to the homeland's health and vitality in what are very difficult circumstances. Then there's going to be another book presentation with Dr. Artyom Tanoyan, who has edited a book called Black Garden of Flame, the Nagorno-Karabakh conflict in the Soviet and Russian press. So looking at how the conflict is represented in the press with some comparison to American press. And then finally, on December 2nd, a book release and poetry reading, Shahe Mankerian's debut poetry collection, History of Forgetfulness. Also present will be other New York area writers and intellectuals, Nancy Agabian, Christopher Atamian, Alina Gregorian, Alan Semerjian, Alina Gharabegian, and Lola Kundakjian. And this event, as well as October 27th, next Wednesday, are going to be in person. This first one you can also follow by Zoom. And so all of this is up on the Zohrab website. And if you go to zohrabcenter.org, you can find that. And so, Matt, would you like to take a few minutes to show off the new website now?
Sure, but before I do that, Jesse's been busy lately, and I think he's missed like some of the last few, the Vemcar series ones, like the last 3 or 4 of them, he was too busy. So on behalf of the Krapar Kini group, I'd like to say, first of all, congratulations to Jesse for achieving his PhD in his new position. So very good. And he explained to me, what is your exact titles, Al?
Of
your position, what is your?
Yeah, so it's a mouthful. Postdoctoral Research Fellow in Armenian Christian Studies and Director of the Zohrab Center.
Okay, so with that big title. Jesse, we have to call Jesse. We can't call him Jesse anymore. He's Dr. Jesse, PhD. So we can't just call him Jesse. Or if we're on Krapar Kini, I guess Hesse Sopestos. Is that how we say it here? Or?
I love that. Hesse Sopestos. Let's go for that one.
So do you want me to share my screen on for the website, or how do we want to do that?
For it. I made you a co-host, so you could do that.
Okay, so let me can you see that? Can everybody see that?
Yes, we can. It looks perfect.
Yes.
Okay, so this is basically something that I think it was back in April or May. Jesse sends me an email, and I had only gone to a couple of these sessions, and he sends me an email that he wants to discuss something. And like, what could he want? Because I don't know anything. And so we talked about some stuff, and then he asked me, what I do and whatnot. And he mentioned like he wanted to do a website for this, but he just doesn't have the time for it. So I just put that on the back burner in my mind. And over the summer, I had some free time, so I started playing around with some graphical design, and I basically came up with a website. The purpose was one of the purposes to publicize what the sessions are, so we have like a calendar of them, and with whatever documents that we have created for things. And another thing I wanted to do, this is a nice place to put resources, and some of the stuff that over the past couple of years I've had to figure out that where I can struggle through translating something, I had to learn a lot, and I wanted to put these resources to the best of my ability where other people can access them. So there's a page on translation in general. We talked about that at one of the sessions. An out page on the alphabet with some lots of footnotes. Oh, here's one thing too, because Jesse, I started working at this in the summer, and Jesse said, okay, I'm too busy now. I'll get back to you in September. Like, we'll take a look at that. So he never gets back to me. I think he's got his email set up that I don't even go to junk anymore. I think it goes right to the delete file because I never hear back from him. So anything on this website is mine, which means any mistakes on there is mine. Jesse has not looked at anything. Actually, that's not true. He looked at the, I wanted, for all the title pages, I wanted to do like a Krapar version of it. And I think we had like 4 emails back and forth talking about 3 words in a preposition. So I think after that, he gave up. He's like, okay, I'm not touching this anymore. So everything on here and all the mistakes are mine. So, and if anybody sees any mistakes, just send an email to an email link and I'll correct it. So like I say, there are a number of resources. Some of them might be basic to people who speak Krapar. Some of them I think are pretty important in terms of understanding. And I think it took me a while to grasp the concept that there is no the in classical Armenian. There's no direct, there's no the. And I think that's because of this. So if someone, I think this is something that everybody needs to understand. I'm not going to go into tonight, but if you read this, hopefully it explains it well enough. There's links to other resources, and I don't know if we recall from March or April when Jesse did his last session, he talked briefly about Hamiles, and I thought that would be really cool to put this somewhere and start translating. So I did a page on Hamiles, and the one that we talked about was from the Library of Congress. So it's for people who don't know what it is, it's a prayer scroll that this one here is, I think, from 1727. It's about 4 inches wide, 5 inches wide, and 22 feet long. And it acts almost like a charm or an amulet for protection. And so just with graphics, this is printed and hand colored later. So I thought this is very interesting. I got sidetracked on some other stuff, so I was going to finish my page in verbs, but I started translating this, and I asked Jesse a bunch of questions that he never gets back to me on. So I've given up.
Matt, click on one of the parts, like 6 or 7 or 8, just to show like how you're doing this. And stop giving me such a hard time.
So I basically, I broke it down into parts, and I basically typed out the Armenian, because you see there's lots of abbreviations, so it's sometimes hard to read. And I've translated. Well, this is an easy one. This is surplus vods. Let me get to here's one that's supplication to keep us from the bonds of demons. All this stuff is fascinating, and going through and translating this is really, really interesting. So I've been spending probably too much time on this, but I've had a lot of fun with it. And if you see any mistakes in this, there are some mistakes, so please let me know. And then, like, some just different things on here, questions about the series, about Krapar in general, some links, and that's basically it. And Jesse wanted me to put my name somewhere on there, and it is somewhere. My name is somewhere on this website. So if you can find it,
it's on the wine label. But
it's on the wine label.
So yeah, go ahead, Matt.
I've had a lot of fun with this, and I've also learned a lot doing this. Like some of the resources that I put together, to be able to explain them, you have to understand them. Like this one, I really dug into it. I think I understand it fairly well now, but maybe not. Maybe someone finds some mistakes.
Yeah.
So that's our website that I'm just having fun with.
So I really encourage everyone to take a look at this, make use of it. A lot of the things we don't get a chance to go into great detail about the grammar, you'll find very good explanations here in a way that's easy to understand and without too much technical terminology. And if you have suggestions or ideas or corrections or ways you think, oh, what if we could have this on the website, or what if we could have something like this, feel free to write to either me or Matt. Okay.
I can stop sharing now?
Yes.
Okay.
Perfect. Okay, so some of you might not know that the name and the kind of original idea for Krapar Kini came from Bishop Daniel when he was at the Zohrab Center. I think he even had a reading group or a language course that Ashley Bozian and Andrew Kayan were telling me about, called Krapar Kini, where they'd meet together and study grammar. When Chris Sheklian last year got in touch with me about the idea of starting one app, it kind of took a different form than the traditional, study of a grammar textbook. And we decided to try to do it in a way that made it more broadly accessible and interesting, given that people probably aren't going to have time to sit down and study grammar, multiple days a week and study in that kind of traditional way. And so our idea was to just bring out some of the literary treasures in Krapar and get a chance to learn about the authors, learn about the text, get some exposure, and just kind of excite interest. And so it's very exciting to have Bishop Daniel here to do just that for us with the text he picked. And I'll just say a couple brief words about Bishop Daniel, not that he needs much introduction, but just to say. So obviously he's the primate of the Eastern Diocese, the first American-born bishop of the Eastern Diocese. He studied at St. Nerses Armenian Seminary, where he learned Krapar, studying with Tom Samuelian, who some of us might know from the Arak 29 website, and as the translator of Gregory of Narek's Book of Prayer. So Bishop Daniel studied with Tom Samuelian for 2 years, and then he went to Armenia and studied Krapar in Armenian using a very good textbook, Krapari Tsernag by Abrahamian. He then went on for his PhD in liturgy from the Pontifical Oriental Institute in Rome, where he studied with the renowned liturgical scholar Robert Taft, and wrote his dissertation on the liturgical commentaries on the daily office by the 8th century Armenian Stepanos Yunetsi, and with a comparative kind of approach, comparing the Armenian daily office and its prayers with those of other Eastern Christian traditions. Before being elected primate of the Eastern Diocese, he was the dean of St. Nerses Armenian Seminary for a number of years, where he was also professor of liturgical studies there and at St. Vladimir's. He's also been a visiting professor at University of Notre Dame and the Pontifical Oriental Institute in Rome. He's authored a number of scholarly and popular books and articles, and is an expert translator of Krapar, especially liturgical Krapar. And I'm sure we all know and love the Pew book that he edited that we find in all of our churches. And so it's a great honor and pleasure to have him here this evening with us.
Thank you, Dr. Jesse, for extremely kind words of introduction. I'm getting a little verklempt here, wie man sagt, because it's all started very humbly. Krapar Kini, one of the wild thoughts that wakes me up at 4 a.m. And we sort of started in a very genuine and sincere and humble form around the one study table in the Zohrab Center in New York. And I'm glad to see that my successors have developed it and made it flourish. And I'm sure it will go places beyond this. But it just, it reassures me and gives me great satisfaction and hope that endorses my thinking that not only is the study of language well worth the effort, and it takes a lot of effort, but particularly for us and for those interested in the tradition of the Armenian people and the heritage of the Armenian people and the message of the Armenian people in reality, right? Iraganutyan mech. Krapar is really a priceless gift, and to spend a little bit of time with it, whether or not we can claim to have learned it, I certainly don't make that claim, is a good thing, which will benefit us many times over and benefit those that would find the kachutyun, right, to immerse themselves in it. So that's what we're doing tonight, and I'm very grateful. It's nice to see, in addition to Jesse, to see my colleague Arpi joining us from our ministries at the diocese, and Matt, you've done a spectacular job. Who would have known? Out of Little Binghamton come great things, and I see so many faces of old friends, and it's just a wonderful atmosphere. So thank you. It's a great pleasure to be with you tonight. I've chosen a text here, and maybe Jesse, if you can put that up. And I guess, Jesse, I'm going to ask you to kind of monitor, because I want to do this interactively as much as possible, and I can't see everybody on my screen.
Sure.
Although I wonder if it wouldn't make sense for me, no, because I don't think I can use my arrow anyway. But as you see fit, Jesse, maybe if you can sort of point thing out as we talk about them.
Yes, I'd be happy to.
And let me, without identifying this, let me see if anyone would like to, number one, just read it for us. I'd like to read it maybe a couple of times through, just nice and easy. And we'll kind of listen to sounds and listen to endings and listen to beautiful, clear Armenian vowels. Who would like to take a shot at reading this through? It doesn't have to be a poetic reading by any means.
I'll read it.
Who is I is Movses, okay? Go ahead, nice and easy.
Օրհնյալ դեր, որ փնագյալ ես իբարձունս, եւ օրհնյալ են բարդ մեծության քո, որ հաստատեցիր զլուսավորս իբարձունս, ի հերգնից լույս ծակեցեր ընդ ամենայն դիեզերս, արարեր զարեկագն լուսադու դուվնչյան, զլուսին եւ զաստղերս լուսադու քիշերո, եւ զլույս ջրակի, Თუ ես լույս քովելի, սուրբ եւ առաջին լույսն, իքեն փախնու խավարն եւ լույս քոգենտանի դեր ձակյա իսրց մեր եւ մեկ միապան ասացուկ օրհնյալ է անուն սուրբ փարած քոց եւ քեզ երկեմք զորություն եւ սպարս հոր եւ որդվո եւ օգուտ սրբո այժմ եւ միշտ եւ հավիդյանց հավիդենից Amen.
Okay, beautiful, beautifully done.
Thank you.
May I ask maybe a female voice to read this, just so for another perspective, another vocal range. And again, just slow and easy. Pause where you feel you need to pause. Follow the punctuation, which gives us some help. Read, I say slowly because especially those that speak modern Armenian, we are tempted to read things, words that are apparent to us in a modern Armenian form that, however, are different here. We can gloss over them. Would any of our women scholars care to read this for us? Otherwise, I will have to cold call. No? Am I missing someone? I'm going to ask Oriort Arpi then to read this for us.
I wanted to give someone else an opportunity, but yes, that doesn't hurt. I will.
I knew that if I called on you, you wouldn't be shy either. So.
Okay. Օրհնյալ դեր, որ փնագյալդ ես ի բարձունս, եւ օրհնյալ են փառք մեծության քո, որ հաստատեցեր ըստ լուսավորս ի բարձունս, ի հերգնից լույս ծագեցեր ընդ ամենայն դիեզերս, արարեր զարեքագն լուսադու դվնչյան, ըստ լուսինն եւ զաստեղս լուսադու գիշերով, եւ ըստ լույս ջրակի, Դու ես լույս քովելի, սուրբ եւ առաջին լույսն, իքեն փախնու խավարն, եւ ըստ լույս քո գենթանի դեր, Զաքիա իսիրդսներ, եւ մեկ միապան ասացուկ, օրհնյալ է անուն սուրբ փարածքոց, եւ քեզ երկեմ զորնություն եւ սպարս, հոր եւ որդվո եւ հոգվին սրբո, այժմ եւ միշտ եւ հավիտյանս հավիտենից ամեն.
Okay, Rashali. Thank you, Arpi. So this is our text. I will, does anyone who has not studied in seminary or looked this text up, searched for it on Google, I mean, anyone seeing this basically for the first time, let me ask you, would you care to venture a guess as to what this is, where it comes from, anything along those lines, just based on what we've seen so far, and then we'll try to look into it a little bit more deeply.
Surpazan, this is Grapar Kini from Philadelphia.
Yes, I'm inclined to exclude you. I'm inclined to exclude you because you've been to seminary too much, but go ahead, we'll let you go.
Well, I don't know, but I'm guessing a morning prayer because I see lots of Luis more references to the mornings. I'm guessing some part of the morning prayer.
Okay.
That's all. Thank you.
Excellent. Excellent. That's the kind of thinking I like. Other ideas?
Christopher here. So it seems very similar to prayers we have in the Byzantine tradition for Vespers, the lamp lightings. So that's why I like, because it mentions the candle, at one point, lighting of a candle.
Right. Right. So we have a morning service and we have evening service. So this is very interesting. Other ideas?
I have no training whatsoever in any of in Krapar or theology or anything like that. But to me, it seems like a monk who's really happy to be alive.
Well, tell me more about that. Why do you say that?
It's all happiness. It's all gratitude. It's all, it's all joy.
So for those that really don't know a lot of Armenian modern or literary, what give us an example of something that resonates joy for you and happiness? Is there something
I don't know. I mean, I understand it. I do speak Eastern and Western Armenian, but it just seems like it's just glory and joy. A lot of park, a lot of,
Right. Good observation. Other thoughts before we sort of dig the first tablespoon of dirt away from this? That's not right. Soil. Any other observations?
Yeah, this is Moses. It seems to me that this is a general thanks to God for all his good things that has given us to us. I mean, this can be done anytime, in my view.
Yeah. There is absolutely a sense of thanksgiving and gratitude here, as there is, one must say, in most liturgical texts. That is to say, most texts, whether they're prayers or hymns or sharagans or karozes, litanies, acclamations, petitions of our worship services in the church, inevitably, they turn at some point to gratitude. So that would be something we would expect here, and I agree with you. I think it's here as well. Well, I want to go back to Garabed's observation, which was recognizing the word Luis. So let's, Garabed, are you with us? Pachav. All right. So I'm going to read through it, and actually I'd like somebody else to read through it. Garabed, are you there?
Yes, but my arm, it will not sound good, so I'm going to pass. Thank you.
All right. So I'd like someone to read it once again, and pause every time we come upon a word that that means light or something having to do with light. Who will do that for us? No one wants to do it.
I can do it again, but I want to give it the chance to others.
All right. Would anyone like that? We don't want to force people here.
I mean, I'll do it.
Okay.
I'll do if it's too bad, then you tell me to stop.
No, we're doing it together.
Okay. No,
hold on, Gary. What's the word for light that you're looking for?
Luis.
Okay, Luis. So go ahead and stop when you see the word Luis.
Okay. Ortnial der vor Panag Yalt. Yes, e partunas. Yev Ortnial yen park Medutian ko vor hastat detzer as Luis Savoris. Okay, there's Luis right there.
Okay, so there you go. So we have Lus Savoris. It's not exactly the word Luis, but so if we will advance ahead 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 words, we see the actual word Luis. Vor hastat detzer as Lus Savoris I partsunis I hergnit Luis. So this is the word Luis, which means light. If you know Latin, you know the word lux, L-U-X, and you see the direct or indirect connection, Armenian being one of the, as you know, one of the most primitive of the Indo-European languages. There you see that connection, lux, Luis, and there are other connections as well. Light is Licht, that's more Germanic and a little bit more distance, but it's all similar. So Luis, and I don't know if you've encountered this in previous sessions together, but as in many languages, including English, in Armenian, certain sounds evolve when the stress turns away from them. So the word Luis, one syllable, one stress, when the stress is no longer on the word Luis, but shifts, then the ui, vohi, ui becomes u. So that's what we find in the previous word, Lus Savoris. This is really as Luis Savoris, but when you read that fast, it becomes reduced to as Lus Savoris. So when we're looking for words connected with Luis, we got to keep in mind that we're looking for Luis and Lus, right? Words that contain those sounds. All right. Let's keep going. I hergnits Luis zaketzer, Gary.
Ergenitz Luis zaketzer und amenain diankeres.
Diazeres. Excellent. Keep going.
Diazeres. Ararer, Zariet Kain.
Zarekagan.
Lusadu.
Yeah.
There's Luis.
So there you go. There's Luis again. Lusadu. Lusadu means from Luis and dal. So giving light. Lusadu, light giving. Okay, keep going.
Dunchan.
Duvanchan. Yeah, Duvanchan. Go ahead.
Okay. As Luisine. That's Luis again. As Luisinen.
Uzlusinen, right? Uzlusinen is the moon. Lusin means moon. Lusinen, that moon. The moon over there.
Yev zas deres.
Correct.
Lusadu. There again. Lusadu.
Same word.
Kinchero.
Yes.
Yev Uzluis. There we are again. Uzluis. Zeraki.
Jiraki.
Jiraki. Okay.
Right?
So
And nobody's
Jiraki.
scared away by seeing Luis and then seeing Luis. We Krapar scholars don't get shied away by that. We're not afraid of that. We know that that just indicates what?
Is that the accusative?
Right? Accusative. In other words, how else could we explain an accusative?
Well, accusative is a
Indirect object, I mean, excuse me, direct object?
Okay, direct object. Let's put that in more common terms, Matt.
well, what's the verb is acting on is the direct object. The Z makes it a definite direct object.
Okay, so what is a direct object?
I eat bread. Bread is what the verb is acting on. That's the direct object.
Right, so direct action of the verb, right? So something about light. So something is acting on the light, something is talking about the light, and we'll get to that. And Armenian is lesson one, and Krapar is you put that Z, and 9 times out of 10, you found your direct object. Next step is find the verb, and we'll do that in a subsequent step.
May I interject a question here?
Please.
For us who are not grammarian, we're laymen, I'm an engineer. Can you please translate this as Louis Jiraki into English?
Yeah, the light of Jirak, Jiraki. Jirak means lamp. The
So
light
what
of the lamp.
is over there? The article D
What are you looking at?
is Louis.
Is Luis. So we're going to get to that in a second. Let me get right back to that. Okay, if you'll just be patient for a couple of minutes.
Thank
Let's
you.
finish counting Luis in here, and then we'll come back to that. Tuyes, Garabed,
Yes, Luis. Again, Luis. Koveli. Surp. Yev Arachin. Luisen. So Luis again, Luisen.
okay, Luisen. So the N at the end of this is the closest thing, Matt was referring to this, the closest thing we have in Krapar to the definite article, the. I'm going to get to that. If we have time, I'll mention that as well. Keep going.
Yev Ken Pachnu Havaran. Yev is Luis. So Luis again is Luis. Ko Gentani. I think that's animal. There.
Gentani actually in modern Armenian certainly means animal, but Gentani really actually means living thing. So from gyank, gyank, the word gyam is to live. So Gentani is that which lives, and that is literally an animal. Animal doesn't mean beast, even in English. It means that which lives, that which has breath, right? From the Latin.
Related to gene and Gane.
May well be. I can't confirm that, but that may well be.
Interesting.
All right.
There, Zakyal e Sirdis. That's heart. Sirdis mer.
Okay,
Yes.
I'm going to stop you there because the rest of it begins a kind of a doxology, a kind of a solemn conclusion to this little liturgical piece. And there's the word light does not appear anymore there. But so when Gary says he sees the word light here many times, he's right. When he says this should probably be some kind of a morning prayer, it's a absolutely rational and correct assumption. The reality is that this is actually a blessing for the evening. Right? So this is a blessing for the evening lamp, for the lighting of the evening lamp. So let's remember that we're dealing here, generally speaking, when we're reading literary Armenian texts, that is to say Krapar texts, we're dealing with, texts that for the most part are centuries old, sometimes, more than a millennium old. That would seem to be the case with this particular text. This is a blessing from the evening hour prayer of the Armenian Church. which we call Yerekoyean Erkutun, the hour of the evening, the prayer for the evening hour, which is a prayer that's a service of about 30 minutes or so that's done in the monasteries as the sun is setting. So it's a prayer of sunset. So we've got to remove ourselves from our comfortable modern lives and insert ourselves into life a little over 100 years ago, which is not that long ago. When the sun sets, it's dark and everything stops. When the sun sets, it's dark. You don't have automatic street lights. Your cell phones don't exist yet. There's no electricity in most of the world. You don't just flip a switch. Nowadays, when the sun sets, we most of the time don't even notice it. Our gadgets continue to work. Our lights automatically go on. If they don't, we flick on a switch without even thinking about it, or we ask our artificial intelligence object to turn lights on, and life goes on. But in the life where our prayers have been written in the Armenian Church, for the most part, that's not the case. So what happens at sundown is the lights are lit. That's a ceremony. That's a mystical moment, not just for Christians, but for all human beings in virtually every religion. Virtually every religion, and I'm not a scholar of comparative religion, the sun sets, that's a massively significant moment when human beings recognize our frailty and our impermanence, and we realize and recognize and are reminded again of a higher power or higher powers, depending upon your religion. So that's number one. Number two, that those powers have influence over us. They have power over us because we have to change the way we work. You got to get in, out of the streets, in, out of the fields. The robbers come in, the thieves come out at night because you can't see them. Then what do? We light artificial light. We prepare artificial light, which itself is a gift from God. How do you make light? You light a fire. So until not too many decades ago, fire equals light. Light equals fire. There's no difference between the two. The only way to have light is to build a fire. How do you build a fire? Well, with wood, with oil most of the time, and with a source of fire. That's the only way you create light. There is no other source of light. I go into this detail because we lose track of these things in our modern lives. And you can have the best Krapar in the world, you won't understand these prayers unless we understand the world from which these prayers come. So the moment of lighting the evening lamp was one of massive significance and religious significance, mystical significance for all of humanity until very, very recent times. This particular prayer for the evening light is very similar to Jewish prayers for the lighting of the evening lamp. At least the way those blessings have come down to us today. Now, this takes us farther afield a little bit, but oftentimes our Christian blessings actually are older than some of the Jewish blessings as they have been, as they have survived for us. And that's nothing more than a reflection of the sad history of the Jewish people, which meant that many of their texts have been lost. And so very often when we are presented with a Christian liturgical text, which seems to have connections with present day Jewish liturgical texts, it's not often the case, it is often the case that the Christian text actually is older than the surviving Jewish text, although the actual paradigm and model would have been an early Jewish text. Okay, so now I've unfolded for you an entire specialization in theological and liturgical studies, which is Jewish Christian liturgy. And there are a number of specialists out there, my colleagues out there, who specialize in that particular field. All of that to say that this is an Armenian blessing of the evening lamp. It's recited, it's offered every evening in the Armenian church, wherever those things are offered. At St. Nersa Seminary would be one of those places. In some of our parishes, in the monasteries of the Armenian church, at Shmiazin, Antilias, Jerusalem for sure, Constantinople and Venice, perhaps, and not too many other places. So there you go, all about lights. Let's, go ahead.
Is this prayer recited before or after the lighting of the fire or the luis?
It is probably recited concurrent with the lighting of the lamp or immediately before it. It's in the beginning of the Vesper service in the Armenian Church. As far back as we can trace the Vesper service, which is reliably to the 8th century in its current form, this seems to exist, this particular text seems to have existed already as a well-known text in the 8th century, which means it predates that. We can't trace its history much before that with any reliability because we don't have other texts against which to compare it. One of my colleagues in liturgiology I used to go around saying that this is a uniquely Armenian text. He tells me that actually no, there is a similar text that is preserved in Georgian, another ancient Caucasian Christian language, which resembles this text. It's not identical, but it resembles it. That, to the ears of a liturgiologist, right, suggests strongly that the origin of this text is Jerusalem. Why? Because where we have common texts in Armenian and Georgian, it almost inevitably points to a common root in Jerusalem. That would mean in ancient Greek, in the common Christian language of Jerusalem, which came to be Greek, from which Armenians, Georgians, Arvank, the other Caucasian early Christian culture, they were present in Jerusalem, and after a certain point, those three Caucasian ancient Christian cultures returned to their native lands and brought these texts with them and translated them into Armenian. That is more than likely the history of this text. If I were a betting man, that's what I'd bet, but as of now, there's no way to prove that. That also would make it very interesting, these connections with modern day contemporary Jewish prayers or blessings for the evening lamp. Jerusalem would be yet again a common sort of epicenter for those cultures. Okay.
So Bazan, Christopher has a question if you're willing to take one now.
Yes, sure.
Thanks, Jesse. Not so much a question, but sort of tying into that maybe for those who might not know from the Byzantine, so Chalcedonian Orthodox world, at Vespers in our tradition, it starts off with reading Psalm 103, during which the priest reads what we call the 7 prayers of light. And the final of those prayers, the beginning is very similar to this, where it mentions, God being the creator of light and creating the sun for the day and the moon and the stars for the night. So for me, that was the first thing that I heard. Oh, it sounds like the prayers of light that we have at the sort of Vesper. So it shows that really common root in the whole sort of big Orthodox world.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, I would bet that even in its Byzantine usage and adaptation that you're referring to, it still probably comes from Palestine, from that Jerusalem and larger Palestinian environment. This is what makes the study of liturgy to kind of liturgical geeks like me so incredibly interesting, because it shows how Christian cultures, different as they are, intersect and interconnect. It also shows us how individual Christian cultures express nuances that are not to be found elsewhere. I'm not saying, harsh dogmas and dogmatic things. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about nuances, which nevertheless are beautiful. All right. What does the Armenian liturgical tradition taken as a whole, what seems to not set it apart, but what gets Armenians historically excited in their prayer? What is it that Armenians see and read and hear in the gospel, which touches the Armenian heart in a way that it touches the Byzantine heart a little bit differently, and vice versa, or the Syriac heart, or the Coptic heart, or the Ethiopian heart, or the Maronite heart? There are such nuances, and that's why we study Krapar, because Krapar is the key, the first step in being able to discover those precious things that speak to our Armenian Christian DNA, not utterly uniquely, no, not in a way that's better than the Byzantine tradition, no, but in a way that is somehow distinctive and may continue to speak to our hearts, even in the 21st century in New York or Cleveland. That kind of stuff I think is interesting and life-giving. So good. So we talked about lights. Let's look at those lights. Azlusavoris, those things that are luminous, the luminous things, right? And we'll get the verb there in a second. The luminous things, the light, lusadu, that which gives light, life-giving. Lucinen, the moon itself. The moon in Armenian is that which is light. All right, if you're looking up at night, what you see is light. You don't see darkness, you see light, and it's the light that's given off by the moon. So the moon is not seen as the opposite of the sun. It's seen as reflective of the light of the sun, which is astronomically, that's exactly what it is. The light we see from the moon is reflected off the sun. It's the sunlight, but coming to us from a different way. Armenian monks who wrote prayers weren't just theologians per se, as we understand that term in a very limited way, but they were, science and theology were not considered two separate fields of inquiry. They were complementary, as they are today, for those of us that know better. Okay, so much for that. Let's talk about questions so far.
Yeah, I have a question with the last thing you said, that the monks knew that the Lucine and the stars are, especially the Lucine, is a reflection.
Yes.
I can't see that in this text.
Oh, it may not be in this text, but what I'm saying is that my only point there is that, well, you may actually see it in this text, but my only point is to say that this harsh division that the modern world imposes upon us, that says that science is on one end of reality and anything else is an optional diversion for those that have nothing better to do, right? In the world of mythology and theology and poetry and those kinds of things, is simply not true for most of human history. And so we should be very cautious about drawing a sharp line between science and theology, between poetry and laboratory or any such thing, which we are very strongly told to accept for no good reason.
Because
point with that.
the same word is used for both, for the sun and the Lucine, lusadu.
That's right.
So it's not, doesn't imply that one is the source, the other is the reflection.
Not in so many terms, no. My point there is that the moon, as we would not know in English, the moon is a completely separate word from sun, completely distinct, right? In Armenian, the word for moon already implies light. That's all I'm saying.
Thank you.
And the monks that would have composed such a prayer or such a blessing would have known very well that the light of the moon is reflected from the sun. Scientifically, they would have known that, astronomically. In other words, Armenian Vartabeds were astronomers. There was no distinction. One of their classes was prayer, one of their classes was music, another one would have been astronomy. One of the basic topics of the quadrivium. Anyway, we won't go there.
Interesting.
Let's look at some verbs. We've looked at nouns. Let's look at verbs. Ordnial der, vor panagialt, yes, I partsunas. Ordnial, panagial. Okay, this is a verb form. It's called an aorist participle. For those of you that want to brag, it's always good to brag when you're studying Krapar. Draw terms that nobody else knows. It's one of the good things about studying languages. Oh, that's just an aorist participle, you say, as you sip your wine and move on to the next conversation and allow people to be very impressed by you. But what it really means is it is a verb form that is connected to the past for the most part. It's a past participle. Although it's more complicated than that, as Matt and I were chatting about after Badarak on Sunday. The aorist participle has lots of usages in Armenian, but for tonight's purposes, we can be content to recognize that it It is a verb form that deals with the past, although it's not simply a verb that states something that happened in the past, okay? Ortnial means blessed, blessed. So the ed of blessed is the way I pronounce the word blessed is already in English a participle, an aorist or a past participle, all right? I can say, you blessed me. That's more of a direct statement of something that took place in the past. God blessed me. Here, it's not quite so strong. Blessed Lord, blessed Lord. Blessed, why? Because God has been blessed. God has received blessings. God receives blessings from us. But all those things are something that are not happening this moment. They're not a priority of the current moment. They're previous to the current moment. Blessed Lord, right? Panagialt, panagialias partunis. Panagial is the same aorist participle, this time with the verb panagem, right? Which means to dwell or to reside, right? Panagial, residing or resided or having taken residence, right? Ipartunis, in the heights, right? Ortnial there, blessed Lord, vor you who panagialties ipartunis, you dwell in the heights, you have made your home in the heights, you reside in the heights, you took your residence in the heights, ipartunis, okay? Yev ortnialen park mezutianko, blessed also is the glory of your greatness. Medzutiun, meds, great. Medzutiun, greatness. Medzutian, of greatness, the glory of your greatness. All right, so blessed Lord, you have made your dwelling in the heights, and you the glory of your greatness is blessed. Blessed also is the glory of your greatness. There's a whole lot of details here, but that's basically what we can put together. Take a look at panagialt, panagialt, that T, I'll mention it only because Matt did. These are the deictics, right, that Matt mentioned early on. So as Matt mentioned, the Armenian language is blessed, is graced. It's a directional, it's a three-dimensional language. So it's a tangible three directions. So there is what's happening by me. Yes, I, the letter S, the sound this, all right, S. There is that which takes place around you, T, right? And there's that which takes place over there, N. These are all suffixes. Many times, not always, when a word ends in S, that means that the action or the object is, or the item of discussion is taking place around me, the speaker. When it ends in T, I penkim T, as this does, panagialt, it implies that the action, the verb, the movement, the object, the subject, the topic of discussion is taking place around you, you. And when we see an ending in N, as we have seen here a few times, luisen, right? That means that action is taking place yonder, over there, all right? The equivalent in English, the impoverished modern English language anyway, is to be found in Old English, where we have this, that, and yon, okay? Yon, think of, I can't think of the poetry now, but one of you can come up with a poetic line from Elizabethan English, right? This is about something over here by me. That is something taking place over there by you. Yon is something taking place over there in the third person. Neither I nor you, but over there some third person. And this reoccurs in many, many, many different forms in Krapar. And yes, German is exactly the same way. And I can't think of the examples right now, but Christopher can supply them to us. And in other languages as well. Russian, Latin and Greek, I believe, in their own ways. So, Ortnial der, blessed Lord, vor panagialt es I partsunis. Yes, Ortnialt, yes. Tunes. So this is modern Armenian as well. You are. Panagialt, yes. You, over there, you dwell. You have dwelled in the heights. Or you dwell in the heights, okay? Yev Ortnial yen. Also, modern Armenian is the same, hasn't changed. They are blessed as well. They, the glories of your greatness. Park. So here we have, and I'm going to not be so detailed after this first sentence, I promise, but this stuff is fun. Park is a word that is always found in the plural form. K is the letter that indicates plural in Armenian, in classical Armenian, almost inevitably. And there are certain words in many languages, including English, particularly older forms of English, where a noun always exists only in the plural form. And they tend to be extravagant words like glory, park. So if I'm going to talk about glory, which in modern English is a singular verb, a singular noun, in other languages, including classical Armenian, it is always a plural. There is no singular form for this word. Why? Because it's an important, big, extravagant idea. So therefore, just one second, therefore it is to be used with a plural verb. Ortnial yen park medzutian ko. Matt?
Just in this work here, I think universe is one of the ones always plural, and heaven is also always plural in this one as well.
Big
right
idea.
In this.
Correct. Okay, so let me kind of do a rough translation here. Blessed Lord, you who dwell in the heights, blessed also, Yev Ortnial, blessed also are the glories of your greatness. All right, now let's look at some other verbs. Vor, you who, there is no English way of doing this. You, right? It's a subject, it's a placeholder for the same subject, you. Hasta de tser, okay? Hasta de tser, when you see er, when you see the word s at the end, tser, tser especially, that s letter at the end of a verb almost always indicates past tense. The ts sound in Armenian is an aorist marker. It's a marker of the past tense. Not 100% of the time, but very often. And if you're just getting started, you see hasta de tser, you see the next word is a noun that's looking for a verb. Why is it looking for a verb? Because it begins with a z. There's a verb there that's connected to this noun. We know that. Well, right before it, I happen to see a word that looks like it could have a past tense, an aorist ending. Probably these two go together, and they do. Hasta de tser, you established, you created, you formed. Okay, that tser ending is you did something. In this case, you created, you formed, you brought into existence the luminaries, as lusavoris. I partsunis, in the heights. So some other day we'd go through and do more of a rhetorical, poetical reading of this text, and you'd see how poetically this is put together. When you see repetitions like Ortnial der vorpanagialties I partsunis, Yev Ortnial en part medzutianko, vor hasta de ceres lusavoris I partsunis. This is not by accident. The poet, the man of prayer, the person of prayer composing this, right, wants there to be a connection rhetorically, prayerfully. All right, another connection. Ortnial der vorpanagialtes I partsunis, Yev Ortnial en park medzutianko. The Lord is blessed, and the glories of the greatness of the Lord are blessed. Blessed, if you like. Okay? So, vor hasta de ceres lusavoris I partsunis, Ihergnitz Luis Zaketzer. Zaketzer. So now, if you're studying closely, you see another verb in the past tense, another verb speaking to the Lord. Zaketzer, you shined from heaven, those same luminaries throughout all the universe. Diezeres. Ent amenain diezeres. So you created the luminaries in the heights, and from heaven, Ihernitz, Luis Zaketzer, you shined light, ent amenain diezeres, throughout the entire universe. Armin, you have your hand raised. Do you want to?
Yeah, dear Spazanai, I wanted to clarify one thing that I heard. I might have heard it wrong. You were saying about Ortnial, Penagial, they are like past. Now, I have been grown in an Armenian family that all prayers do not have past in it. It's always, it's past, present, and future. So in my understanding, if I say Ortnial, it means Ortnial in the past, it's Ortnial now, and Ortnial in the future. Penagial, then, now, and in the future. So I just want to make sure that I am not confusing myself, that you are introducing me to something that I am not familiar with, at least in my family.
Yeah, I don't know if I'm drawing you to something more that you're not familiar with. I don't know that. What I am doing is I'm going to draw you deeper into something that you've touched upon, which is time and prayer. And what we will see, since you've suggested it, is we actually have a text here, which, like inevitably every prayer text in ancient Christian traditions, in any case, which means Orthodox and ancient Latin liturgical texts, inevitably begins in the past tense and moves to the present tense, with some reflections for the future. But generally speaking, we deal with the past and we deal with the present. And I'm going to talk about that in a little bit more detail in a moment. But let's look at the grammatical forms first. So far, we're in the past tense. The verb forms are clearly in the past tense. Ararer, okay? Ararer zarekagen. So if you want to bet that that's a zarekagen is a noun that is here acting as a direct object, you would be right. You see the z in front of it and you see the nu at the end of it. Zarekagen. In fact, the word is arekag, which is sun. Zarekagen, the sun. So then you see the word in front of it and you say, well, that ends in er, It's not ser, but it's er. That sounds like that could be a past tense verb in the second person, and you'd be right. Ararer zarekagen. You created the sun. Ararer zarekagen. You created the sun. Lusadu devincian. Giving light to the day. Giving light to the day, devincian. Özlusinen yev zasteris lusadu kishero. Again, parallel format here, parallel form, poetically, rhetorically speaking. The verb is the same, ararer. What did you create? You created the sun, zarekagen, özlusinen, the moon, yev zasteris, the stars. Aster, aster. You created the sun to give light, or as light giver to the day. You created the moon, as lusinen. Yev zasteres, you created the moon and the stars, lusadu kishero, as light giver to the night, kisher, kishero. Yev as luis jeraki. You also created the light of the lamp, jerak, jeraki, of the lamp. All past tense. You did all of these things, blessed Lord. Okay, now we're going to find a transition. All that is in the past. Now we're going to go to the present tense. Tu yes Luis coveli. So this is This is a sentence that anyone who knows modern Armenian would be able to translate. Armen?
Yes.
Tu yes Luis Koveli.
You are the light to be praised.
Yes, you are the praiseworthy light. Koveli. Kovel is to praise. Koveli, praiseworthy, to be praised. You are the light to be praised. You are light to be praised. So problem with Krapar and English is that when we're translating from one to the other, and modern Armenian as well, you can't simply assume that where the English language requires a definite article, the word the, that Armenian, either classical or modern, also requires a translation of the word the. It doesn't work that way. One of the most difficult aspects of mastering the Armenian language for a native English speaker like me, extremely difficult to learn when I need to use the word the and when it is already implied and not needed by the Armenian. And you'll notice that native Armenian speakers who are mastering the English language, they have the same difficulty. And this is the case with many languages. In Armenian, it is the case. So here in Armenian, we'd have to say, you are the light, capital L, to be praised. Or you are the praiseworthy light. Krapar, you don't need it.
I have a question.
Yes.
Why there is no N at the end of Luis? Because Zlusinen, tu es Lusin Koveli, why don't we have N over there?
So exactly what I just said. Exactly what I just said.
I didn't understand.
I'm sorry. So let me try to say it in a simpler way. Or Jesse, maybe you can say it in a simpler way. Or Matt.
Yeah, well, you, I think the question is, why do you have Uzlusinun, and we have the new with the za, but right where you'd expect the same thing, you have Uzluis, but where's the new Jiraki? Why no new here or here? And the answer is that, like, it's just, there's flexibility in Krapar. You could have it, and actually you could have it as Luis Jirakin. It could be here, kind of saying the whole thing's definite, but you could also just not have it. And you learn in a grammar book usually that, when you have a za and it's definite direct object, you're always going to have the nu or a say or a ta with it there. But in reality, in a lot of texts you see, you can have the za without one of those, and it's just understood or implied that, it's definite. So you should expect to see kind of flexibility and variety there.
So it's a matter of flexibility. It's also a matter, I suspect, of nuance of meaning. Armenian doesn't want to be overloaded with za and nu, right? It gets heavy and it just doesn't come out right. But this is a reminder to us that computers can do great things for us, and they will help us, and they are helping us with translation already. But translation is an art, and it can never be equated with mathematics. It just can't. Mathematicians may or may not make good translators, but there is a style and there's a nuance here that is very human and distinctive to each language, and very difficult to express that in a kind of a mathematical way.
Sir Prazan, I have a thought here. Is the light of the lamp, we're not specifying where that lamp is. So like that lamp is here, it is there, it's way over there. It could be anywhere. So we're not giving it the suffix because it's any lamp. It's a specific lamp, but it's not in any specific location.
Yes, it's the generic lamp. We're not pointing in a particular place. Yes.
Jirag is also Luis.
Correct.
We use it all the time. You say Jiraka Luis.
Correct.
So Jiraka is not lamp of the morning. It is Jirak, which means light, but Luis is associated with more like the rays, if you wish.
Jirak means light by implication. Jirak actually is the lamp that contains oil and a wick. It means light and can be used to express light and is used to express light, but by extension. But the object itself, Jirak, is a clay ceramic, you've seen these things, right? Dug up from the ground, into which you pour oil and you insert a wick, and that gives light. Is there a difference? I mean, phenomenologically, maybe or maybe not, because the lamp is the light.
Yes.
But as a matter of fact, when an archaeologist digs up this thing from the ground, he's going to call it a jarak. He's not going to call it luis.
Luis, exactly, yeah. But in a lot of prayers, you'd find only jarak without luis.
Right. In this case, I can assure you that it refers to that ceramic vessel, because that's
well. Also, but when you read the prayer, it means light as well. I mean, jarak in that context is meaning light.
That's right.
Without referring to luis.
Tu jes Luis Kovedi surp եւ առաջին լույսն. Armen Tarmane.
So ներողություն սպասան, որս
Tu jes Luis Kovedi surp եւ առաջին լույսն.
The first light.
The holy.
You are the Kovel praised light, and the first light.
Okay, so you are the praiseworthy light.
Yeah.
You are also the holy and first light.
First light, yeah.
Right. So now we're reminded of the countless passages in the Old and New Testaments which equate God with light. There's nothing distinctively Christian about that, although Jesus Christ identifies himself as the light. So there's a whole series of sermons there, not only one. Again, going back to the world, the world that I began with, where light equals life. If where light is lacking, where there is an absence of light and therefore there is darkness, never mind moralism and symbolism, you die. Without light, there is no food. Without light, there is only danger. There is evil lurking about to hurt you, to destroy you, to steal from you, and you die. Simple as that. So we have to be very cautious as postmodern beings when we read the New Testament and we sort of dismiss all of this as lovely poetry. This is real, right? So when Jesus refers to himself as the light, I am the light of the world, that's not just beautiful symbolism, right? Without Jesus, there is no life for the world, period. So Christians, whether or not we accept that there is an overall, deity to which all humanity of whatever religion can relate, that's not what Jesus is saying. I am the light of the world. And by the way, that's in the Gospel of John. In the Gospels of Matthew, Mark, and Luke, Jesus identifies us as the light, right? You are the light, right? So there's an interesting series of sermons there in theology to be discussed, but maybe not tonight. Tu jes Luis Koveli, surp եւ առաջին լույսն, iken pachnu chavaren. From you, the darkness escapes, is chased away, runs away, right? In your presence, from your light, darkness is chased away. So this functions on the literal level, right? When you switch on the light bulb, there's no more darkness. But the meaning here clearly is much deeper than that. Darkness morally, darkness sacramentally, mystically, right? Symbolically disappears. It cannot coexist with you. All right, the point here is that, again, the verb is in the present tense. Pachnu, from pachchil, I think, pachnu chavaran.
What is iken?
Iken, from you.
Oh.
So we call that ablative in grammar speak, but it means from you. Ken related to ko, related to tu.
Kesme.
Okay, we saw the word ko on the second line, first word of the second line. All related words, all about you, different forms of the word you. Darkness flees from you, escapes, runs away from you. Yev is Luis, so now we're looking for a verb. because there was a period here, michagedga. So we're going to on the hunt for a verb. Az luis ko gentani der zakia isir desmer. Okay, so kind of lesson, the way I teach Krapar, lesson 2 or 3 is to recognize that words that end with ya, as we find them constantly in liturgical texts, are verbs and they are imperatives. Imperative means it's a command. I am giving one person a command. Zakia. Here the word is, we saw zakia before. Zaketzer, we saw line 2. Zaketzer, you shined light from heaven throughout the universe. We have the same verb now in a different form, this imperative addressed to one person, zakia, shine. Shine what?
Your light.
Shine uz luis, right? Back, sorry. Yev uz luis ko gentanidzer, zakia isir desmer. So let's take that apart. Shine, imperative, command, shine light, uz luis. Shine what light? Shine your light, uz luis ko. What else can we say about that light? Uz luis ko gentani. Right, we talked about the word gentani. In classical Armenian, it means living. It's an adjective, gentani, right? Which it actually is also in modern Armenian and English and other languages. But here it's in its primitive adjectival form. So what about your light? Your light lives. Your light is alive. It's not just a phase. It's not just an apparition. It's not just a visual apparition, but it's a living force. Okay, so I can think of 2 sermons there that can be ready within 2 hours that I could deliver. All right, the light of God, the light that is Jesus Christ, right? The light that Jesus Christ identifies himself with is alive, right? It is alive as you and I are alive. It is alive as your child is alive, your pet is alive. It is not an object. It is not an object to be investigated. It is a living, breathing, as it were, reality. Shine that living, breathing reality, isir desmer, into our hearts. Okay, all of this is in the present tense. An imperative is a form of a present tense. You do it now. Okay. Yevmek miapan asastsuk. Okay, so here's another beautiful verb form that we find continuously and constantly in liturgical texts. Asastsuk. When I'm training deacons, they use this verb form about every 10th word is this istse, which does not exist in many languages. I'm tempted to say in any language, but I don't have the authority to say that. All right, but in classical Armenian, we find this impossible, it's not a phoneme, but it's a combination of sounds. Asastsuk, right? Asastsuk, and there are those that are born with the ability to pronounce this, and there were those that are just born without that ability to say that. So asastsuk. And both the s and the ts are absolutely essential. Otherwise, the word is incomprehensible. All right. It is a kind of a future form. We don't have to go into the grammar of it, but it means either we shall say, asa, come from asem. Asem is to say, right? Asastu can mean either we shall say, or it means we will, we should, let us say. We shall say in the future, or let us say, an invitation. It means both. And go ahead and try to translate into English. The English language does not allow us to translate this adequately. Armenian asastsuk means we shall say, let us say, it is our joy to say, let us say confidently because we really are going to say this. There's no way to say that in English. You got to choose between we shall say or come on, let us all together say. So it's either a command directed to ourselves, or it's an invitation. But in Armenian, it's more than an invitation, and it's more than simply an indicative sort of statement. Go figure that out. Good luck. That's what it's saying. So for pronunciation purposes, I'd like us to practice this. Asas tsuk. Okay, so let us say asas together.
Asas.
Asas.
Okay, now let us say
Tsuk. Asas tsuk.
okay.
Tsuk.
So let me hear Dr. Jesse say asas tsuk.
Asas tsuk.
Okay, very good. Let me hear Harutyun Kezelian, I think you're still there, who's a deacon, say asas tsuk. Are you still there, Harutyun? Kanats. Kanats. Okay, who else is there? We'll say this for us. Aras, I see you. Unmute.
Asas tsuk. Asas tsuk.
Abris.
Asas tsuk.
Who else is here? Moses.
Asas tsuk.
Very good. Armen.
Asas tsuk.
Elisa, your hand is raised.
Oh, that was from back when we were talking about Luis or Luisen.
Can you say asas tsuk for us?
Absolutely. Asas tsuk.
Very good. Okay, so we're all pros here. So yevmek miapan asasuk. So yevmek, mek in Armenian, in Krapar is menk. In Ashkarapar it means we. We as a subject. And we together shall say. Let us all together say, we shall say together. Okay, what shall we say? Ordial e anun surp parats kots. Blessed is the name of your holy glory. That parats is the same as park, but it's declined now into a genitive form, so it means of your glory. Same thing with kots. Kots goes together with parats, right? Park ko, parats kots, right? So let us all say together, blessed is the holy name of your glory.
I have a question about parats. Why isn't the K there? Not there.
The K is not there because it's in a different form. So we're not talking about glory per se. We're talking about, so let me say it this way. The translation is not simply glory, but of your glory. Not just your glory. So look at the first line. Ortnial en park medutian ko. Blessed is the glory of your greatness. Here we are saying, blessed is the name, the holy name of your glory. In order to say of your glory, there is no word of in Armenian. We have to change the word glory. We have to decline the word glory so that it conveys the meaning of possession, of ownership, the name of your glory. And we do that in classical Armenian and modern Armenian by changing the ending. It's called a declension.
But for Moses's question, that's a plural ending too. So the K is there, it's plural, but it's in a different form than the K.
Right,
So
plural
it's still
because
plural.
park is plural, because park is one of those plural nouns, never appears in the singular. All right.
The ots is
So
the
that's
plural
why-
form of it.
Correct. All right.
Is quotes your?
Kots is your, yes, your, but it has to rhyme with parats. It has to agree with parats. So we're getting now into the intricacies that are, in order to get a deeper meaning of these and to be clear on this, that's when we got to start memorizing verb forms and noun declensions, which I never recommend. I can't help but tell the story of how I studied Latin with a remarkable Latin professor in the Vatican, who for many, many years, his name is Reginald Foster, an American priest who was until recent years, the Vatican Latinist. And he was the one responsible for translating anything that came out of the Vatican into Latin. Things for centuries have not been written in Latin. Official papal documents and letters and so forth are written in Italian or Polish or Spanish or other languages, German, and then they are translated for their formal form, their official form, into Latin. Who does that? Latinists. And I was had the blessing to be able to study Latin with the premier Latinist in the Vatican. And He taught Latin in an upside down backwards way, which is kind of what was the inspiration for Krapar Kini, which is he forbade us on the first day ever to memorize anything. He said, Latin is too beautiful to sit down and memorize tables and declensions and verb forms. He forbade it. And so I have somewhere, which I'll share with Jesse someday, box fulls of these remarkable assignments that he would give us, very similar to what we're doing now. On day one, he had us reading Latin, day one. And he said, if I ever see you with a list of verb forms, I will kick you out of this class immediately. And he did it once. He was a wacko, complete crazy man. Came into Latin class with a bottle of wine every day, wrapped in a paper bag, in the Gregorian Institute, the renowned Jesuit Institute. And nobody was supposed to know what he was drinking, but his cheeks were as red as blood. And he was stumbling around the classroom reciting Cicero, and it was the most exciting 2 years I ever spent in a classroom. Anyway, where did we get to? So in order to understand why it has to be parats kots, you got to study those things. Okay, let's finish. Kez yerkimk, and to you we sing. What do we sing? Zor nutyun, blessing. Yev iz paras, the same word glory, now in a different form. We sing what? We sing blessing and glory to the Father and to the Son and to the Holy Spirit, now and always and unto the ages of ages. Amen. So the first part of this blessing, we would call it in Armenian a machtank. It's really better. It's not the best word for it, but that's how it's officially known, is in the past tense. The second part, beginning with tu yes, Luis Koveli, is in the present tense. And that is the inevitable form of Christian prayer in all ancient churches, almost without exception in the Armenian church and the Byzantine and other churches. Why is that the form? Because that is a biblical form. In the Old Testament, we find that inevitably in covenantal expressions, covenantal formulations, right? When the covenant is given to Moses, but to Abraham before that, when it is expressed again by Joshua and in many other places, it is inevitably first expressed in terms of what God has done for us, and then what we are doing and will do and commit to doing, let us say, for God, as an expression or as a result of what God has done for us. A little bit of theology, a little bit of biblical study there, if you're interested.
I have a question about this. Yerkez yerkem zorutyun yevis paras.
Zornutyun, escuch Moses, zornutyun, not vot zorutyun, zornutyun, blessing.
My question is why there is no S for zornutyun's yevis paras?
Because that's the way it is. Because that is the form of the accusative, the form of the direct object for ornutyun. In this case, that's all that's needed. One could add an S, it would change the meaning. It would mean then, to you we sing this praise or this blessing. That's what the S would mean. If we added an N to it, it would give it a slightly nuanced, different meaning. In the case of park and paras, the word park must have an S here. It's not optional. Is paras. Why? Because the word is from a different family of nouns, and the way the endings work in that particular family of nouns is different. That's the simplest way to put it for now.
Yeah, thank you.
May I ask a question?
Sure.
About the structure? Is this taken directly as is, or between the machtank and the imperative section? Would there have been? Is there? I don't have my book with me to look it up. Is that transition between?
Excellent question. I'm dealing with true scholars here. So it's a great question. What you are referring to is something different. You're referring to what you've seen in our liturgical services, which is called a double prayer form. So usually in the Armenian church, when we pray twice. So you have an entire prayer with an amen at the end. Then you have Chalutun Amenetun, peace be to all. And then the deacon's invitation to bow down. Then you will have inevitably a second complete prayer, which begins again addressing God and ends with amen. So that's different than what we have here. In that case, what you have is each of those two prayers will begin with a section in the past tense and then a section in the present tense, and then amen. Then a second prayer. The second prayer likewise will begin in the past tense and conclude in the present tense with amen. Okay, but that's different. That's a double prayer, and each of those prayers has two parts. This is a single, it's not exactly a prayer, but we'll call it a prayer where the first part is in the past tense and the second part is in the present tense.
Mhm.
Does that answer your question?
Thank you. I'm just more familiar, obviously, with morning sunrise, which we do during Lent, obviously, and this is obviously one of the least known offices for me,
Right.
at least.
Right. This is the evening hour service, which I'm encouraging our clergy to do. I'm
Sure, and
encouraging our clergy to include this or to insert this one day a week to offer evening prayers in our parish churches for whoever wants to join us on a Friday night, a Wednesday night, whatever they like. And increasingly our priests I see are beginning to do this. So look out for this.
Very much so. Dead June is giving us all an excellent education in New Britain.
Yes, yes.
Can I ask a question or a few questions? Do you have time?
I'm here all night.
Well, yeah. Well, several questions. One
I
is
still have some wine in my glass. So.
yes.
Yes.
You mentioned something about the tradition of some ceremonial of burning or a fire for in the evening. Do we have any indication that primitive people that exist now have certain ceremony or something like that that you mentioned?
Well, the answer is yes. Every ancient Christian church has some kind of a lighting of the lamps blessing, if not the actual ritual of going around the church and lighting the candles. There is a Thanksgiving blessing for the light in every single Christian tradition.
Current primitive people that are very primitive, that they don't have electricity and live in the jungles or something.
So I haven't studied those religions. What I can tell you is that this is an anthropological fact.
Right.
Light is, without light, there's no life. You don't need to be, it doesn't matter who you're praying to. If you understand that light is beyond our power, particularly in primitive societies. They understand that this is a gift that comes from somewhere, whether that's from a personal God or a group of gods or forces in nature, right? It's there. So there is some awareness, I would wager, that light is a gift for which some power out there is to be thanked. So yes, is there a ritual to that effect? I suspect in many places, yes.
Yeah. The second question is, in the morning when this fire is turned off or put off, is there a certain prayer or ceremony also that
to my knowledge, there is no ceremony for extinguishing the lamp. There are absolutely prayers for the rising of the sun.
Right.
In every ancient Christian tradition. That's what morning prayer is about. Aravodian Jamerkutun, and in the Armenian church, even more so, Arevakal. Aravakalijan.
Yeah. One thing that I have just came to me in an idea that I think this is a very beautiful thing to appreciate in everyday life. I didn't know about this, that every time I turn the light on now, I will remember this passage. I wonder if this needs to be told to our parishioners to be appreciative of the light that they turn on every day, just to remember this. I mean, I don't know if that is something feasible to do or you know.
Absolutely. I mean, I think one of the challenges we face, all Christian traditions, but especially we and our sister, ancient sister, churches, we face, the problem of a modern and now worse postmodern world where, young people or anybody reads a prayer like this and say, well, it's lovely, it's poetic, it's life, it has no connection to my life whatsoever.
But there is.
But it does. Right?
Of course there is.
It does. The problem is not that this has lost its meaning, it's that we've lost our sense of reality because of the complexities of the world we live in. Doesn't mean we've done something wrong, but it means we're living a very superficial life nowadays. So I agree with you entirely.
Yeah. On a lighter note,
I found there a great irony in what you just said, but the complexity of life has caused us to lose our depth and to become more simple almost.
Absolutely. We assume that by having great sophistication in science, which we definitely do, in finance and information technology, we assume that we are wiser and better off than those that lived when this prayer was composed. And that's absolutely demonstrably false. And all you need to do is read one page of Gregory of Nodegg, not to mention other Nodegs and other church fathers, to realize that they were onto something about which we have no clue. And the tragedy and the travesty is that our people leave Christian faith as a result, thinking that we have surpassed now faith. We no longer have a need for faith. That was for poor, primitive, ignorant people who lived at another time before we knew how to invest in the stock market. And that's the tragedy, and that's the challenge of our church today. Dr. Jesse, if you could share the screen with me, I'll put up my translation of this if people would like to see it.
And hang on real quick. While I'm doing that, I want to make sure Avi had an interesting question in the chat that I wanted to ask on his behalf. And Avi, feel free to jump in if you want to explain what's behind this. But he says, is the combination "the name of your glory" common in Armenian liturgy?
What is the question?
Is the combination "the name of your glory," how we had Anun sur Paratskots, is that common in Armenian liturgy? That
not to my knowledge, no.
Okay.
No, it sounds very Semitic though to me, to my ears. I wonder if Avi has a observation on that. I'm sure he does actually, but you don't have audio, I guess.
Oh yeah, Avi, we can't hear you.
Okay, Avi's going to type us that.
Okay.
And in the meantime, Jesse, if you can let me share the screen.
Yes, so you should be able to share the screen now.
Why am I not seeing it? Wow, lots of documents. Give me a moment here.
Okay. Avi says that particular combination reminds me, lost the chat, of a very common pattern in post-biblical Hebrew, starting in the time of, well, we'll let him, everyone can read it in the chat.
Yeah. Here's my translation. So I'm finishing up a complete translation of the Ժամագիրք, which is the book that contains all the services that are done throughout every day. Predominantly in the monasteries, but not exclusively. And part of that is the evening prayer that we call Yerekoyean, from which this blessing is taken. So this is, I don't claim, this is a translation that is intended for worship and prayer. It's not intended for etymological, deep linguistic study, nor for profound theological, analysis. Nevertheless, it's a pretty close translation. And this is how I translate it. If you want to take a screenshot, you could. Blessed Lord who dwells on high.
We don't see it.
You don't.
You have a different screen up.
Yeah, we're seeing the one that looks like an academic article study.
Oh, I'm sorry about that. There it is.
That looked very interesting also.
How about this? Do you see that?
Yes.
Yes, we see that.
Okay. And I'll go back and, actually it could be fun to point out a couple of things here that are kind of necessities because of English. Blessed Lord, so Ortnial der, who dwells on high. Blessed too is the glory of your greatness. You created the lights on high, luminaries, I'm calling that lights on high, and from heaven you shine light throughout the universe. You created the sun to give light to the day, and the moon and the stars, and the light of the lamp to give light to the night. You are the praiseworthy light, capital L, the holy and primal light, right? Darkness flees from you. Shine your living light into our hearts, Lord, and together we shall say, quote, blessed is your glorious holy name. And to you we sing praise and glory, to the Father and to the Son and to the Holy Spirit, now and always and unto the ages of ages. Amen. Jesse, how much time do we have? I don't want to hold you longer. I can play with this all night.
No, yeah, well, I think, it's relaxed enough that anyone can leave as they like to leave, and those who want to stay can stay on, and we can stay till at least 9.
Okay, so, I'm just going to do it this way rather than calling on people. There are obviously areas here where I had to make judgment calls because the English does not easily suit, right, or translate. I mean, it doesn't equate the nuances of the classical Armenian. In order to do that with English, you end up with a rather stilted style, which really doesn't work for modern people who would like to pray these texts. And since that was my primary goal and objective, I made some accommodations. I don't know if any of you care to sort of look for some of those. You can do that on your own time, perhaps. But they're here. And I think some of you might find those interesting. But I will, there we are. But I mean, that's really it. I think maybe the rest of this I could leave to you to ask questions or comments.
When you talked about the first half and you called it a magtank, is that the word you used?
Magtank, yeah. Magtank is a tough word, yeah.
Is it like imploration? That's the word.
See, the problem is, I haven't solved that problem yet. Magtank is a word. Magtel is to wish or to exhort. It can also be to petition. I haven't solved because there's no obvious equivalent in other ancient languages. Not in Greek, not in early Latin, to the best of my knowledge, nor in Syriac. I mean, those are the languages that I think would be most relevant. So I'm not sure exactly how the Armenians come up with the word magtank. It's not a direct translation of a liturgical technical term in Greek or Syriac, which is what I would look for. Functionally, it also can apply to, in other words, there are a number of different kinds of liturgical texts in the prayer books of the Armenian Church that are labeled magtank, but they're actually quite different, one from another in format and structure. So I don't know exactly what to do with that. And for this translation, I have not solved that problem yet either, what I'm going to do with that word.
If I just mention something about Louis and the tradition that I'm accustomed to, is that in certain dates of the liturgical calendar, families made sure to go to church and light a candle and bring it home. Specifically, the name day, the priest came with the light from the gantia. It has to be from the gantia, and brought it and in the lamp holder, and brought it to the house, and they lit a candle, and that candle was supposed to stay alight until it finishes. If the wind blew it, or somebody by accident, that was bad luck. Something bad is going to happen. So the light was very important part of an Armenian family. They brought it from the church in holy days, and then in a name day of a certain person in the house, the priest brought it to the house. And it was very important to keep it, that everybody saw it. So light is an important factor in our lives.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Jesse, would you like to read the rest of Avi's entire comment there? Because he's finished it now.
Yeah, sure. So he said, the name of the glory of his kingship is in the most central part of both the evening prayer and the morning prayer of post-biblical Hebrew in the Mishnah. So the combination name of the glory of God is also a key concept for a school of medieval Jewish mystics in Europe. So this sparked his curiosity.
So Avi has researched in the past connections between Armenian and medieval Jewish mysticism. So there are interesting connections there about what you're the master, not I.
Surface on this is got a bit Sartishan. I had a question.
Ayo.
Yeah. So I did find in the Book of Hours, in the Vespers, a nice little translation. I think I got this from the seminary years ago. It's similar. It has, thou art and lots of these and thous in there. It's very poetic and very nice. But I actually had a question about the lights from heaven, the luminaries. In the Armenian tradition, do we have any talk of the stars in heaven being angelic beings? I'll just put it that way.
I mean,
I'm sorry, not literally, but figuratively, let's just say.
So angelic beings. Angels are associated with light already in the Bible. I'm trying to think liturgically. If I can't, nothing comes to mind immediately as far as a reference that I could quote to you.
Or that angels had guardianship over certain stars or anything along those lines?
No, that doesn't. No, I don't. That doesn't ring a bell for me.
Okay, fair enough.
That doesn't ring a bell for me.
Thank you.
Any other questions about the text or even comments on Sarpazan's translation or?
Oh, yes, I do.
Yeah, Elisa?
Yes, well, remember when we were all getting a little hung up on whether or not to put a nu on the end of Luis and the flexibility, both poetic flexibility. I find it interesting that Sarpazan had in your translation, the one that did have a nu, you capitalized that light as very concrete, the light, the first light, where the others are all more conceptual light.
That dynamic is definitely going on. Referencing the general lights, the various kinds of lights in the heavens, versus you are the true light, right? You are the holy light.
I think the translation, especially in general, your translations of liturgical texts are really commendable for getting across the simple beauty and power of the language. So if you read a lot of Krapar, you can see this prayer, for example, is very striking for how it's as profound as it is like simple on the surface. It's like the grammar is not difficult, the language is very simple, but the meaning is so profound, and we've seen to the kind of depths it takes us. But your English translation, likewise, it doesn't come across as like overly stilted or formal or all these like fancy words that would get in the way of like the immediacy and power of the language. Like the styles match very, very well.
I have a question. Reading text in Krapar is mostly the consonant sounds like in Western Armenian. Is it very wrong to read it in Eastern Armenian phonetics? I'm just starting learning Krapar. So should I try to pronounce the consonants following Western Armenian phonetics rather than Eastern Armenian? Because I speak Eastern Armenian.
No, in my opinion, I wouldn't do that. And in my opinion, I don't think that's necessary.
It's not wrong to read the way.
On the contrary, an argument could be made that it's more authentic, because Eastern Armenian preserves the nuances between among the families of consonants, which Western Armenian has lost.
I wasn't sure if this is new or that preserves what was more authentic, like Eastern Armenian. I didn't know if that was newer or Western Armenian just lost some of the consonants.
Yeah, that's probably the case.
Okay.
Probably the case. I think, we're Western Armenian speakers, that's the language that I learned. So that's why we tend to pronounce it that way. We're in the West. But I don't think it's wrong otherwise. And in fact, in Armenia, no, they're pronounced very much according to the Eastern pronunciation, which is more precise. It distinguishes the various sounds. Every consonant has a different sound.
Okay.
Has a unique sound.
Okay, thank you.
Well, thank you so much, Sir Pazan, for spending 2 hours with us over this text. This is what this group is all about, is just coming together to spend time with these rich texts and see where they lead us and what kind of insights can come through. And it's just a joy and a pleasure to get to do that on a monthly basis, and especially rich and meaningful to have your liturgical and theological commentary as we're reading this, in addition to the grammatical insights and the intricacies of the language. So thank you so much.
My pleasure. My pleasure.
Thank you.
You can see I enjoy doing this, as you do. So I commend you all, and keep up with it. It's an intellectual journey. It's a spiritual journey. It's a puzzle, and well worth all the effort that you put into it. So thank you.
And can you give us
Jesse, for all your good work too with this, and Matt especially.
Yes, our pleasure. And don't forget, so November 17th will be the next one. I'll send out the link as usual to everyone that's here and on the list. And as we go, would you, Sir Pazan, give us a blessing and departure?
Yes.
In Krapar, if it comes readily to mind.
Yeah, when we can say Hayr Mer together.
Okay.
Jesus Christos, amen. Hayr Mer, yes, Geritianun ko, Yegesti Arkayutun ko, Yeritin Gam ko, Vorbes Ergines Yevegri, Es Hatzmer Hanabazor, Durmez Aisor, Yev Tormez, Es Bardis Mer, Vorbes Mek Tohum, Merot Bartavanats, Yev Midan Yiris Mezi Portutun, Alpergaz Mezi Chare, Zikoy Arkayutun, Yev Zorutun, Yev Park Havidianis, amen. Շնորհք դիարն մերո Հիսուսի Քրիստոսի եւ սերն Աստուծո եւ հաղորդություն Սուրբ Հոգվույն եղիցին ցեզ ընտամենեսյանդ. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you. Thank you.
Good night.
Thank you. Good night, colleagues.